All right, so welcome to Chisholm Trail Milling. My name is Corbin Johns. I've been with this company about 9 months, and my background is ag, food, and manufacturing related, with most of my experience being in the food manufacturing industry. So I've worked for companies like No Man's Land Beef Jerky and Tyson Foods, and I have decided to leave all that behind to follow something that I feel passionate about, which is to bring a high quality, healthy flour to the population of Oklahoma and hopefully to the rest of the country. And we're working with wheat breeders at OSU and farmers that are local and not so local, for lack of a better word, to find the best products as close to home as we can and bring them to your table. So behind me is our 48-inch Stonemill. This is our newest piece of equipment. And today we're just going to walk you through the process and talk a little bit about the product at the end of the day. So to start off with, we receive our grain shipments in. They come in the form of these totes here. These totes can weigh anywhere from 2,000 to 2,800 pounds, or they come in the form of a 3,000 pound black bin. We haven't had the black bins in a while. After we review, accept the shipment, the grain is then weighed out and loaded into the hopper. This particular hopper can hold about 300 pounds of grain, but we'll only ever load about 200 into it. After it's loaded into the hopper, it's then fed into a worm auger here, which then spits it out into the top of the mill housing. Now in this mill housing, there's a little piece of plastic in here that knocks all the grain around off the top so that centrifugal force can feed it into the actual stones. So as that grain is feeding in, it's getting ground, and in this case, between two 1,400 pound slabs of granite. And this spins at about 40 RPM. So you can imagine that 200 years ago, if you get something caught in that, you're not going to have a good day.
Stonemill is pretty cool, so I want to kind of dissect it a bit and look at its elements. So that top stone is called the runner, and that's the stone that turns, and it's like 1,400 pounds. And then the bottom stone is called the bed stone. It's going to remain completely stationary. Now, those two stones are never going to touch, but they're very, very close to each other. So wheat seed that gets caught between them are going to be milled, and that's what the milling is. If we took the runner off and looked at the bedstone, this is what it would look like. You see there are different furrows, like a trench in the stone. And you have a master furrow, that's the longest and the deepest, and it starts at the eye. And as the wheat seed enters that master furrow, as the runner revolves, it's going to cut the wheat seed. And it's going to be pushing that wheat seed towards the skirt. The skirt is at the end of the circle, the outer edge of the circle. And as it goes down the master furrow, it's going to also encounter the journeyman furrow. The journeyman furrow is medium length. It's not as long as the master furrow. And it's a medium depth, not as deep as the master furrow. And again, it's going to be cut by the runner as it revolves. And then it will actually still leave the journeyman furrow, and it's going to hit the apprentice furrow, which is the shortest and the most shallow furrow. But now, so the master, journeyman, and apprentice furrows all have different depths, but for each furrow, as it moves from the eye to the skirt, it's going to decrease in depth. So that as that wheat goes from the eye to the skirt, it's going to be cut into smaller and smaller pieces. Now, the stone mill is an ancient technique. It's been used for millennia. And you see the words the master, journeyman, and apprentice. So like 1,000 years ago, when millers were in a guild, you think like the Actors Guild today. A guild is like a union, but that's what they called unions in the Middle Ages. You had the master, and you had journeymans, and you had apprentice. The master was the person who taught. The journeyman was the person who was I almost learned everything I needed to know, but still needed to practice. And the apprentice, of course, was someone who was still learning. If you know the term masterpiece, well, to become a master, you had to produce a piece, something that showed you really knowed your skill. And so that's where the term masterpiece comes from. So I like the fact that we still have these terms because it reminds us of the history of these stone mills. Now, the design of these stone mills is a big time art. And not every stone mill is going to be designed exactly like this. This is just a good representation of what a stone mill might look like. And they designed the furrows to create a certain type of flower at the end. And you can see that there's kind of 8 different segments of furrow designs, and each of those designs of furrows, the master furrow, the journeyman furrow, the apprentice furrow, that group is called a harp. So you have 8 different harps here. And the whole idea is for that weed to go into the eye to be pushed to the skirt, and as it goes, it keeps getting cut into smaller pieces. And in between the furrows is something called the land, and there's going to be very small parallel grooves there, and that's going to cut the grains again. They call it cracking, but it's really just a different way of cutting it. So we're getting smaller and smaller particles. You probably notice I keep saying that the mill cuts the grain. That's to emphasize that it doesn't crush it. If you crush the grain, that releases oil from the oil, O-I-L, I'm aware of how my accent is. It releases oils from the germ and will cause the flour to become rancid if stored long. And also the stone mills, they have to be designed to make sure that air gets in, because the dust created from milling of wheat is actually more explosive than gunpowder. That's crazy, right? And so that's one reason among many why the runner and bedstone never touch. It may create a spark and cause an explosion. And also, although the runner, it does turn rather fast, but it could go faster. But you have to moderate the speed at which the runner turns because you don't want it to go so fast that it cooks the flour.
After it's ground and kicked out through centrifugal force, it is fed into this automatic sifter, which has been an absolute lifesaver. So this is separated into 3 real coarsenesses and then bran. So this is going to be the finest flour, the closest to the mill. This is going to have most of your starches from the grain, and it's as close to white flour as we can get. After that, we have the 2 middle sections, which the terminology would be middlings for this. So this is going to be a little bit more coarse. This is closer to your cream of wheat consistency that you'd get out of the box in the store. And this is just a little bit more coarse than that. And at the very end of this sifter, it puts out all of the largest pieces of grain that went unground and the chaff and the bran. So after this is processed in this manner, I will mix it by hand until we achieve a consistency that we are not only happy with, but more than willing to have anybody taste. I've already mixed the 2 middling bins together. So we'll start at the finest stuff and just go to the end. So this is a combination of both middling bins. So there's going to be, I mean, you can see it right in there. There's a lot of bran, things like that. But we'll start here. This is the flour that comes from the closest part of the mill. It's very fine, very soft, and pretty darn close to white. After that, we'll get into the middlings, which you can see are much more coarse, grittier, a little bit harder. And then at the very end of the process is the most coarse stuff, and you can actually hear that hitting the glove. So this is all the bran, all the chaff, and all the large pieces of grain that went unsifted. So while this is most of your sugar and starch, this is most of your flavor right here, right in the middle. This is mostly germ with a little bit of flour on it. So that germ, really, the germ in the bran is where all your flavor is when it comes to flours. So whenever you're going through a stainless steel process, they're separating it all out. They're treating just this flour, turning it, bleaching it, enriching it, doing what they need to with it. But in the process of doing that, they're stripping all the flavor away. So at the end of the day, when this is all hand mixed, you will have a product. Let me get into the Big Country bag. That looks like this. And that's the finished product after mixing. You'll see little pieces of bran in there. And when you feel it, you'll feel the coarse little pieces of germ and then the fine flour. So right now we're dealing with 5 main products, and they come from a variety of different wheats. So our Big Country is a hard winter. It's also a white wheat. So it's a hard white winter wheat. And what this is it's going to be a moderate protein, really great absorption, with a huge dairy forward flavor. So if we want to go ahead and taste that real fast, just get a little pinch. Sprinkle it on your tongue. Move it around. Yeah, right up. It's going to be more cream, more dairy. A lot of unsalted butter from that is what I get. With a very, very, very slight nuttiness. After that, we'll have our Gallagher. Which is more nut forward, but it's also very similar in protein content. I'm talking 0.1% protein difference between the hard white and the Gallagher. And the Gallagher is a hard red winter wheat. So if you actually look at these two, you'll notice that this one is much whiter, much creamier than the hard red. And then whenever you taste it, you got very slight notes of pecan with a little bit of dairy. It's the opposite of Big Country.